Okay, so yeah, I'm sure people may still be joining as we go, but let's kick off because we have a lot of really important information to share with you guys today. So, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever throughout the country and the world you're joining us. Thank you for making time to join these important sessions on the Thread of the Month. We're now third in a series of at least 12 sessions on Thread of the Month, trying to keep our competencies current. My name is Nick Del Rey. I'm the Director of Training at Noble. If someone could mute. Yeah, I'm the Director of Training at Noble, previously formed Federal Resources. Prior to my change of career to join Federal Resources / Noble, I did 34 years in the New York City Fire Department and wrapped up the last 12 years of my career in FDNY as the chief in charge of FDNY Hazmat, and was tasked with part of a team to help rebuild the New York City Fire Department post, both tragic and heroic events of September 11th. Right? And that I couldn't do that mission on my own, and I certainly couldn't do it without the support of Cris Aguirre, who I'm proud to call a friend and much more than a business partner, a true friend who's helped me throughout the years and helped out our responders and warfighters throughout the years understand what hazards they're dealing with so that they can more safely accomplish their mission. So super proud to have Cris with us. I'll turn it over to Cris, but quickly, Cris did 35 years in Miami-Dade, ended his career as a lieutenant on their all hazards hazmat response team and the USAR task force down in Miami. And Cris is the co-founder of Hazmat IQ and the creator of, most recently, Biotech IQ and Chem Bio IQ. So training programs that we deliver to you at Noble to help you better, more safely accomplish your mission in a way that speaks to the first responder, warfighter, federal law enforcement officer who have a more dangerous, more challenging job than we even did back in the days, Cris. So with that, Cris got a lot of great information. I'm going to turn it over to Cris and have him share with us his thoughts on handling a cyanide ricin incident.
All right. Can you hear me, Chief?
All good, brother. You sound and look beautiful.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. All right, guys and girls. So listen, this is the way this is going to roll. I should take no more than 20 to 30 minutes, and then we'll open up to any questions. So instead of asking questions or chatting questions during this delivery, we'll just leave it for the end. Here's the other thing. I'm not going to play the role of someone that I'm not. So we're going to play a game. At least I am. What I'm about to share, the way I'm going to deliver this is under this envelope that I've had many times when I was an LT on Hazmat in Miami-Dade. A phone call just came in through the fire. It's the FBI. Sometimes it's the local police wanted to let us know that within an hour, they want us to go to a certain location because there's going to be a raid. In my career, it was mostly drugs and occasionally a homemade explosion. So this is like a brief. We don't have an hour. We got 20 minutes. We can get on the rig, and everyone that's participating in this webinar is responding in whatever form or shape. EOC, public health, fire, military, police. Listen to the program with who you are. I'm going to deliver a briefing as the lieutenant on the hazmat rig. All right. So the next slide. This is the brief. The reason they didn't give us a day is because this is very sensitive information. The fact of the matter is, and this is true of this case, the information was intercepted on an app called Telegraph. in Telegraph, two brothers that are politically and religiously were asking on how to make an explosive. And also later they were asking how to make ricin. And then they linked the website to the purchase of potassium cyanide. That's all the information we have. The photographs that we're seeing is really a spoiler because this is the actual call. I want you to notice the PPE.
Hey, Chris.
But also,
Hey, Chris.
yes.
Your audio keeps cutting out a little bit.
What about
I'm
now?
not sure why it is. Yeah,
I'll
that's
speak closer.
better.
Okay, I'll speak closer to the microphone. Let me know,
Okay,
Carol.
thank you.
All right, good. So
Yep.
go to the next, let's go to the next slide. All right, this is an idea of what we could be running in, right? And this is the mission objective. So I'm going to tell you this, the objective of these next 20 minutes, and you guys work for me, you're on my team, at least, you know, the hazmat component is that we will safely respond to this location, to this condo, this hotel room, because we think they could be making ricin or some type of a sign. So,
Hey, Chris.
yes.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
You still, it's still cutting out a little bit. It might be beneficial. Why don't you do this? Sorry, guys, for the interruption. Why don't you mute your computer right now and call in? So you'll still just mute your computer.
Okay.
And then turn the volume down.
All right. I mute my computer. Done. I'm going to and call in the number.
Call in the number. Sorry, guys. I think this will make it clearer audio for everyone. Chris, you're muted now. So if you're testing, you're
What about this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This better?
I think it's. I don't know what's.
All right. So I'll mute. I'll call in.
Thank you.
Okay, dealing with a little bit of technical difficulties. Please hang in there with us. I promise it'll be worth it. We want to make sure Chris has clear audio with you guys. And I'll just dance waiting for Chris to come in. But what I don't know, personal experience, what I always loved about Hazmat IQ is it boiled down a lot of technical information into what are the hazards, what PPE our guys should be in, what instrumentation we should be using for both, you know, identification and decon, right? So that's really boils it right down to what we need to do in our job. And a lot of the other hazmat training I've been part of, both in FDNY and even nationally, is just a lot of information. And, you know, we always get that, like, well, just tell me what I need to do my job safely. So that,
All right,
that's
I'm on.
what I think is the biggest thing. Go ahead, Chris. Thank you, brother. You're on again.
All right,
You got it.
All right, let me make sure that I don't hear an echo, which I do.
Turn the volume down completely on your computer as well, so you're only going to be using your phone.
Okay.
There. Okay, test,
How's
test.
that? Yeah.
Much better. And then
Yeah.
before we get started again, Chris, sorry, I just want to make sure that everyone can see my slides. I'm presenting the slides, so it'll be on Caravans, and then Chris is presenting. Is anyone having a difficulty seeing the slides and Chris?
No, Kara, I think we're good.
Okay, good deal. Perfect. All right, go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
And you know, just a little footnote, team. I'd rather go into a poison unknown than go through this what we just did. I'm technically a little bit challenged, man. Send me into hell. I'll go. But man, don't tell me to upload something to Dropbox. I'll fail. All right, so here we go. here we start again. All right. Again, for those that just chimed in and joined us, this is a presentation that's going to be based on something I've done many times in my career, which is a phone call that came in from a SWAT team, from a federal agency, maybe an FBI or a local agency, that said they're going to have a bust within an hour. They didn't give us lead time because they really don't want to tell anybody because it's highly confidential. And the only intel we got is that according to online chats and an app called Telegraph, and this is the truth of the call that just happened recently in Germany, they were these brothers that have a history of political and religious zealots were asking for recipes for explosives, homemade explosives, for ricin, and they also purchased 100 pounds of cyanide from different locations. All right, so that's all we got. All right, now the goal of the briefing, because we only got 30 minutes, is this. What I believe after 35 years is at the top of the list of a long list of important things. It's a long list, but not at the expense of the first four, which are: what are the hazards? What are the meters? What do I wear? And how do I get it off of me? Because the ultimate mission is that we go home at the end of our tour or our shift, be it 24 hours, 24 days, or 24 months. All right, so I'm showing you A and B because I put it up in the PowerPoint in the briefing and says, listen, this is what they could be making if it's ricin. But the reason I put unknowns is because don't what they call in cognitive behavior blindness focus, where you focus on something at the expense of everything outside. We call it tunnel vision, because a white powder can be cesium-137, can be TATP, can be anthrax, can be ricin, can be sodium cyanide, etc. So we got to use meters to be able to quantify a hazard, or at least qualify the hazard. So let me give everyone in the room an idea. All right, put on your hazmat hat on. Let's say that I put a PID meter over one of them and I get 0. Then I put it over the other powder and I get 170 ppm. Keep that almost like, think of almost the Wheel of Fortune. One letter has been flipped. What that PID told me is that that's most likely a volatile organic compound, even though it's a powder, and that there's some volatility, and that's why I got a PID reading, and it ionizes under 10.6. I put a rad meter. Both of them are equal background. We rule out. I put some type of an opioid or a drug stick. It's not a drug. It's not fentanyl. It's not carfentanil. It's not heroin. I put a protein swab on one of them. Some of you know it is a 20/20 kit, and it turns purple. What does that tell me? I put there's some type of other beakers, and I'm getting PID readings and I'm getting LEL readings. This is what I want you to think. I want to know if it's a chemical, a biological, a radiological, or is it explosive? I want you to come in with the full view of all of these, and these are the instruments that we're bringing in. And we're gonna do 2 entries: primary search, secondary search, when we're searching a building, or inner outer inner. When we're doing extrication, we're doing 2 searches. One is macro. I want to make sure that the room is clear of any flammability, radiation, corrosivity. Second one is, let's focus it to the lab, to the beaker, to the powder. All right, so the first team, go to the next slide, Carol. This is what we're running. If you look, we're running a red 1. All right, this isn't from the BRG. We will show you that in a second, what that is. Where does that come from? This is something we created called the BRG. Notice that it says chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, explosive, and drugs. We added a D to CBRN because drugs now can be used as a weapon. And then we're going into turnout. This is what I'm doing, right? If you're in charge, you can choose your PPE. I'm using turnout. If you look at the PPE and SCBA, because I want to rule out all the hazards that can kill the entry team from a distance. Radiation, flammability, some type of chemical reaction. So I want you in the highest level of protection if that goes south on us and give you a chance for us to make a rescue. That's why I would not use plastic on the unknown until we can clear what we just shared. The red one is all hazards. If you notice the meters in the bottom, and you can see if you go to the last mission-driven PPE, since we're doing a recon, I'm going in TO, in turnout. It doesn't mean if the cops want to go in there, the federal FBI want to go in level B, that's fine. You can come in level B. But if you look above LEL, you can see that their action level changes from 5% to 1%. As soon as my LEL goes to 1%, plastic, heads up. As soon as it goes up to 2%, no yellow light goes to green. All yellow lights go to red. As soon as it goes to 2%, whoever's in plastic, get out. We can push it to 10%. And we can even bust 10% for a reason. Whatever that reason is, it's usually to save a life. Next PowerPoint. Next slide. These are kind of a little bit of visual of what these, and by the way, this is a model that we came up here at Noble. It's called HMPD. All right, that's almost like a risk-based response model. It's an acronym. Hazmat, HMPD, Police Department. What are the hazards? The meters that see the hazard, the PPE, while I'm in the hazard, and how do I get it off of me if that hazard got on me? All right, those are the things I want to know initially before wind direction and occupancy and time and weather. All right, you can see the top has toxicity and all the 9 hazard classes, and the organic peroxide, which is the one on the right, notice that it's orange, it's red and yellow, 5.2, which is something like a TATP, right? If it was a nitro, it'd be the one to the left, which is the orange. It's not an organic peroxide, it's an explosive because it's a nitro. We're going to bring all the instruments that let us know if it is or if not, rule in, rule out. The meters are in the bottom. The PP I'm choosing is turnout gear. And until we can dress down with numbers. And then the decon is going to be separated between people and equipment. If we're going to use people, it's usually, soap and water or that reactive decon skin lotion. It's a military thing. But you guys might have it on your wrist. And then equipment, we'll use chemicals. The Dahlgren, the Decon 7, isopropyl alcohol, the Brutaz, which are chlorine dioxide, peracetic acid. I'll give you an example of something I read up while preparing for this. The Air Force is experimenting with high vapor pressure hydrogen peroxide, or with heating a room up and pumping in humidity, because if you had a spill on an expensive aircraft, you can't use chemicals. All right, so there's 100 ways to do decon: wet, dry, ventilation, evaporation based on vapor pressure. The chemistry or the biology will dictate how we remove it. Next slide. All right, so I'm going to give you a meter reading. By the way, if you see something like in the left, where you see some type of beaker with some type of a stick right above the beaker, and you see a separation of color, that's a process called chromatography. This is a separation of color. All right, so and the reason I shared that is I didn't know this, and maybe some of you did. I did not. That's how they separate the ricin from the 97% junk in the mash. All right, so we'll talk more about that later. But right now, let's say that you put the PID meter over that jar, the mason jar number 3, you get PID readings and you get LEL readings. So you still don't know what it is, but we know the hazard. This is flammable. That's why we wore turnout gear. And the reason we use the LEL is because we're not going to shoot it with a laser to see what that jar is if there's an LEL. Right now, there's a cap on that. But if there wasn't a cap, like the one on the left, maybe just putting the cap removes the flammability because the vapor pressure of that flammable liquid is high enough to set up, and the flash point low enough to set up the LEL meter. All right? So we categorize number 3 as a flammable liquid. We still don't know what it is, but that's fine. That'll be in the second term. That'll be a second entry. And we put a cap on it. Now we get 0% of the LEL. Number 1 or number 2, I'm not going to say 1 or 2. We take a protein stick, which is a 2020 kit, which is made by Hygiena, and it turns purple. That it doesn't tell me what it is, no different than pH paper does. All pH paper tells me is it's corrosive acid or base or neutral or no pH, right? If you take pH paper and put it in a flammable liquid, it just
Chris, you might have to call back in. For some reason now you're muted and I can't unmute you. You might be able to unmute yourself, but
Can you hear me?
you're back. All right, perfect. Go ahead.
All right. Did everybody hear me for the last few minutes?
Yeah, it just cut out. You just cut out. So
Yeah.
carry on.
Was I talking and did everybody hear me?
Yeah, you're rolling good, brother. Keep going.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to hold the phone next to me. If you so you got a protein swab. So now you identify that that's a protein. Hey, you don't know if it's a protein shake or you don't know if it's a compound that has protein in it. The other one, you really got no information. So, you really not, your PID said 0. It had no 0 LEL. Your FID, if you had one that's 0, you did a little bit of a wet pH and you got a little bit of a color change, but you had to wet the pH. So, look at the next slide. Tell me, now you know why why these meters turned to what they were. To go to the next slide. So the ricin at the top was the protein swab, right? Now that you still don't know what it is, right? We still don't know what it is. The cyanide, potassium cyanide, really doesn't ionize. It's not flammable. There is a corrosive element to it with wet pH. The Ki paper is not an oxidizer, and the acetone was the flammable liquid. Now, we still don't know that. I'm just telling you that because so we can see how the meters kind of categorize. I think about this, man. Check this analogy out. I want to get into the zip code, which means tell me what the hazards are. I don't really need to know the address, which is precisely what it is. So that really doesn't matter. Just if you get me to the zip code, I know what the weather is. I know what the hazard is. Let's go to the next slide. This is another book that we have. This is a take on the emergency response guide, which is chemicals, the ERG. But this is called the BRG. The BRG is designed just like the ERG, but instead of chemicals, it's biologicals. And here's the reason why, man. There's thousands of bacteria, of viruses, of parasites, of toxins, more than there are chemicals. There are more pathogens than there are chemicals. So, but the ERG only dedicates 2 guides to biologicals, and 1 guide is also 214 other chemicals. They want you to respond to ricin. the way you respond to VX or butyl acrylate or corrosive paint, and it's not good enough for us. So we designed this one that's more targeted to the biological. What you see on the right is the inside cover of that book. It's a little guide. It's a pocket guide. It can fit in your 511 in your side pocket. You flip it over, and this is the periodic table of biological agents. And they're categorized in 3 letters, A, B, and C. Okay, and I'm going to use hazmat metaphors and terminology so that we can understand, because we don't have time, right? We got an hour before the raid. A is like the lowest ideal H. They're all toxic, but it's the lowest. It's the one that's the most highly mortal, the easiest to disseminate, the ones that most likely our enemies are trying to cultivate because they can hurt us in a large amount of population. Now, don't get me wrong. Do not underestimate the bees, because if you look at if you look at yellow 14, according to Ken Alabak, which was kind of the Dr. Fauci of the bioweapons department in communist Russia, they had missiles pointed to D.C. and to New York and L.A. with glanders in it. And they were trying to perfect, and they knew that only 20% to survive. So out of 10 missiles, 2 were survived. So do not underestimate the yellows and the greens, right? They're just based on mortality rate from the CDC. Now let's focus on ricin, just to get an idea how this is designed. Go back to the periodic chart, Kara. All right. The reason it's number 13 is because I would go at the air. I would go on the air after doing an HHA for like a RAID 5, or maybe you got a razor, or I like to go from cheap to expensive. The protein swab, they told me there's a protein, is $2. The HHA may be $100. The PCR is $50,000. So let's go from cheap to expensive. So the HHA, the RAID 5, the one that has anthrax, tularemia, seb, it has ricin, and I forgot what the other one was, maybe botulinum. If you look at the H in that 13, that stands for that they make a handheld assay, a lateral flow assay, kind of like the 15-minute COVID test that has the control and the test, right? Some just have the test, which is simplex. Some are duplex, which is, let's see if the ticket's working. That's the control. Let's see if your sample is positive. That's the test. So you can see if you went to yellow 12, which Milwaukee had a boatload of yellow 12 in the mid 80s. It cost them $1 billion to remove it from the water. There is no HHA.
To the phone right now. Please leave me your name, number, and a brief message.
All right. So the P stands for portable PCR, the razor, the film array, and the T stands for it's a toxin. When I go over the air, all units on the scene, we have a yellow 13. I'm not going to say ricin over the air because everyone's monitoring the radio. Yellow 13. Now go to the next one, Kara. That's what you see. Each one of those numbers that were like atomic numbers on the periodic chart of elements are now BSDSs. You know what that means. Instead of material safety data sheet, it's a biological safety data sheet. Or for the new people, instead of an SDS, it's a BDS. A biological data sheet, a biological safety data sheet. And quickly, remember, this was designed by firefighters, by first responders for first responders. Very quickly, you see the meters, the hazard, the PPE, and the decon, and also the route of exposure, how to treat the patient, the mortality rate, the incubation period. So if you inhaled, look at the mortality rate where the IDLH is on the NIOSH guide. If you happen to inhale, and by the way, the LC50 is those are micrograms, meaning it's kind of like 22 millionths of a gram will kill you through inhalation. Right? That's why I don't want to wear an APR or a PAPR till we identify all that. Later we can downgrade, but after we know what we've got. We're still working on SCBA. And you will start seeing symptoms in 4 hours. Think about this. Look at the type. It's a toxin. Toxin begins with a T. Time begins with a T. Whenever there's a toxin exposure, Abram, Ricin, the symptoms that you see down in signs and symptoms will start appearing in hours. In hours they'll appear. Virus and the bacteria are days. So right there in the Ricin, you can see PPE for life safety, right? Because this is a criminal scene. There's going to be a criminal investigation. We're just there to clear the room for the investigators. And if you look at the very bottom, the investigators can wear level B, class 2 SCBA after we clear corrosivity, radiation, inflammability, and any type of exothermic reaction occurring, right? That's why we bring the temp gun in, the pH paper in, the F paper in, we bring an LEL meter in, and we even bring a PID in. Because if we can't identify the toxic in the air, we're going SCBA. SCBA is for things above IDLH or unknowns, right? So, and then patient care. If somebody is contaminated, if there's someone in there that's unconscious when they bust the room, this is what the ambulance or EMS or the paramedics would wear. If you go to the right, quickly you see this is how we're going to decon the patient, and this is how we're going to decon the equipment, the PPE, and the ambulance. You can't put it back in service. And if you look at the very bottom of equipment decon at the end in bold, I'm going to show you a meter that I challenge that any team in the country has. They're buying them now after we do the training, and they realize we don't have that capability. There's a gap in our equipment capability. That ATP meter, again, so that I can give you an example so you have an idea what it is. It's kind of like a PID for protein. It's an instrument that's about a couple of $1,000 that measures instead of ppms and RLUs. And according to the FDA, anything under 100 is the OSHA PEL or the Eagle or the amount, you can release the ambulance. Because if it is something, it's underneath the load, and we'll show you that later on. There's the treatment, supportive care. There is no antidote. There is no vaccine for ricin. They're working on it. The United Kingdom is working on one. We're working on one in the United States, and it's starting in phase 2. And they've given it to mice after exposing them to inhalation ricin, and it worked. It worked, but it has to be given before 4 hours. If it's not before 4 hours, it's irreversible. And it got a clearance from the United States of America in case this comes down anywhere in the country that they are allowed to administer that vaccine to one of us that's been exposed if it's before 4 hours, if it's life and death, under the direction of the doctor taking care of us or the patient. All right? And you can Google that, right? Ricin vaccine. It's an American company. All right. Next. This is the cyanide. All right. So the other powders I got, look at cyanides on the right, team. The cyanides on the right, just focus on physical chemical property. We got no PID readings because if you look at the IP, they're not applicable. The reason they're not applicable is because ionization is kind of a phenomenon that tends to occur in covalent bonds. Covalent bonds are above the line. Above the line means that the first name of the product is not a metal below the line. Potassium and sodium are on the periodic chart. Propane is not. Vinyl chloride is not. Ricin is not. That's more of a toxin. But acetone is not. So they don't give you IPs. If you ever get an IP on an unknown liquid, that is all covalent, all above the line. it's a non-salt. There's no LEL. There's no UEL. There's no vapor pressure. And if you notice at the IDLH, they're in milligrams per cubic meter. All right? So that's why we're wearing SCBAs, because we're going to inhale the dust. For those, look at chart number 4. Look at the first green column. This is something that every FEMA team should have, because you guys remember from 9/11, more people got hurt by respiratory, breathing air they can see, than almost the 343 brothers that were killed when the collapse. This is a dust meter. That's a PID for below the lines. We got a PID for above the lines. We got PIDs below the lines, the dust meter, and now we got a PID for proteins, the ATP meter. That stands for andesine triphosphate. It's an ingredient in protein. It looks for that. All right, go ahead. Go to the next one. We're coming up to the 7th inning stretch. That's what we would say over the air. Go back to that, Kara. All units, one of the powders is a blue 8. And the blue 8 is the cyanide family, be it potassium or sodium. If you you got to watch out if you get it on your skin or you get it on your suit, or there's water next, because if any liquid below the pH of 11 will release hydrogen cyanide. And the reason it's in red is because hydrogen cyanide with water becomes hydrocyanic acid. At pH is red. That's why you see the X in red in air. But the solution that got wet is sodium hydroxide or potassium hydroxide, which pH is blue. Go to the next one. This is the above the line chart where we used, there was no more LEL. We brought in the laser. We shot the laser underneath the liquid level. Don't shoot it above the liquid level or at the liquid level. Heaven forbid there's a black, aluminum flake up there and you heat it, and the flash point of acetone is 0. And we find out that it was acetone. You go to the top of the chart, you see the syllable acet, which means organic. For those that are into the chemistry, 2 carbons, and you go down to the ketone, which is that carbonyl oxygen double bonded to a carbon. But we're not chemists. We're about to do a raid. We're backing up the cops and the bomb squad, and we're running a red 14. So acetone is a red 14. Those are the hazards. Those are the meters. Those are the PP that we'll use. The meters in red have yellow lights and red lights, because whenever you get to a yellow light, it's a heads up. When you get to a red light, it's a get out, unless it's worth it. Next, stay on that one, Kara. Stay on that. And look at the NIOSH guide to the right. The molecular weight is greater than 29, meaning that those vapors are underneath the table. So don't just monitor above the container. The ionization is underneath 10.6. That's why you could do your PID. And the flash point is 0 degrees Fahrenheit, and the room is around 70 degrees. So it's ready to burn. And the solubility tells me that if I got acetone on my suit or on my skin, all I need is water to decon. I don't even need to use soap. And the reason why is because it's soluble. You can remove it with water. And here's a heads up. Here's a pro tip. I can use the PID at decon before they step out to the clean room, because if they have any acetone on their suit or their body or their clothing, I'm going to get PID readings at 1 part per million. So give them kind of like a Star Trek tricorder, look over their body, over their suit, making sure it's 0 or at least equal background, because sometimes there's a little bit of a volatile organic compound in every background. Next slide. That's the instrument class. That protein pen is what we're going to use in the hot zone. If it turns purple, you can see the purple buffer in the bottom. That's only $2. It's the same thing as the 2020 kit. The 2020 kit is a protein vial and a pH vial. I like more the protein pen. It goes lower on the protein levels needed to stain. And I got pH paper on my rig. You don't need to sell me pH paper. And the expiration is twice as long. And the one to the right is $50. The one to the left is $2. And easy to carry, right? Easy to read. You don't need almost a meter technician. The one in the middle is a lateral flow assay. or handheld assay. That's the rate 5. Multiple companies. That's the COVID test. You see the wells in the bottom. You see the test strip. This is called duplex, meaning that we're going to make sure the control strip turns on, which means the thing's working. And then the test strip, you got to pause it. You can see Ricin right above the R, right above the A, right? That's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a rate 8. They make a red 5, an 8, and a 10. That's the FTI Raman that we're going to be able to use on sodium cyanide and acetone. Remember that when you shoot that, the formula has to have 3 capital letters. If it's 2 capital letters or 1 capital letters, you're not going to get a hit. There's no spectra other than some outliers like sulfur. And here's another thing. If you use FTIR, if you got FTIR back at the station, go get some protein powder and look at the spectra of protein powder, and you get something called rabbit ears. About 16 to 17, 1650 to 750, you see 2 spikes. And at 3000, you see a hump. And that'll tell you that it's a protein. You don't know what it is, but it's more of a biological. And the one to the right is the PID for protein. That's the ATP meter. That tells you a number, not a P. It's almost like a pH pen. That gives you a number, not a color, like the protein pen. Next slide. These were the objectives, all right? Because I love you. I want you to go home to your family, right? And we're going to a dangerous mission, and we don't know what the hell it is. So we're going to go in, we're going to, as an all-hazard response. Did we meet the objectives? Did we meet, do we feel safe and confident? Because you might have the equipment, but if you're weak in the mind, because you're not confident in yourself or your leader or your team, you can fail. You know, something we don't talk about, you know, the mental health of response. Do we have the mental health that Cris led us in a way that he covered all the bases on the hazards? Yeah, we brought all the meters in on the meters. Yeah, we brought them from biological to chemical to radiological to drugs to explosives. The PPE, highest level of protection. We will dress down when we clear the environment from LEL corrosivity and radiation. And the decon is there. The decon is based on what the product is. Are we going to use the bar system, you know, where it's mostly dry because it's snowing outside or it's bad weather outside and we have to decon in another room or a corridor, shut down the HVAC, all those things, but that's based on what the physical, biological, and chemical properties are. Like I told you, if it's acetone, we use water. If it's something like an oil, we have to use soap and water. Ricin you can wash off. And then let's say you want to kill it, we can use Dahlgren. We can use chlorine dioxide, the brew tabs. We can use peracetic acid. We can use Decon 7, whatever you have. But how do you know it's disinfected? Because clean is measured with the eye. Disinfecting is measured with a meter, the ATP meter. What number? Under 100. Why 100? Nobody's regulating that, and we're going by the FDA. 100 RLUs, relative light units. Do we feel safe? Are you going to follow me? That's the objective of this training. I appreciate your attention, guys. I hope that you learned something. I know I did. And together we can do something that I can't do by myself. I lean a lot on your expertise, on your suggestions, and I want to hear them now. What do you think? Did I miss something? Would you change something? Or do you ditto the response? It's
Hey,
your
brother,
turn
I'll
now.
just jump in for a second. This is Nick Del Rey again. Thank you, brother. I hope everyone enjoyed, and thanks for hanging through technical difficulties, but I think it's well worth it. That, again, Cris is able to, and this is just like a short movie trailer version of what we can provide for you from Noble. And I love the fact that Noble is a full service solution provider, where we have like 75 instructors in our cadre who will sit with you to determine what your mission is, what your capabilities are, what your gaps and vulnerabilities are, and then support you by filling those gaps with not only the equipment, right? As chief of FDNY Hazmat, particularly after September 11th, we had a blank check to buy equipment, but that wasn't making us better. You need to have the right equipment and supported with the right training that we will support you before, during, and even available after the training to make sure you and your people can respond safely, get the job done, and get home afterwards. Certainly available for questions or comments now or anytime.
And Chief, I just want to share something. Hey guys, thanks for the shout out, man. I'm getting the emails on you guys like that. You know, that's cool. I was thinking about you when I designed the course. If you were my family, if you were my team, what would I want you to know? But I'm sharing something about mental health in the business. Let me share something with you. I'll give you a football metaphor. If you go to a game, before it starts, you can see the field goal kicker kick it from the 60-yard line. So he's got the strength in his legs to kick from the 60. How come a couple of hours later, from the 30, with 2 seconds left and a game on the line, he can't kick it? It's a wide left. It's a wide right. And that's mental health, mental strength, confidence in your skills. And that's what I train, not only the academic, but that I preach it almost in a way that I contaminate you guys with. We have confidence in you and in us and in our equipment and in our training. Right? The University of Miami is going to the Final Four, and the coach said, I train under this mantra. Train them, then trust them. Thanks, Nick.
Sure. No, we do have some questions in the chat, including somebody was asking about getting the BRG book that Cris displayed there. Like every piece of equipment we sell in Noble, and I'm a big supporter of, we'll give you the piece of equipment, but only if we're able to train you on that equipment first, right? We're not just looking to give you equipment. You need to have the training that goes along with it so that you can operate safely. Great piece of equipment, the BRG, but you need to be trained on the proper use of it. Kara, any other questions in the chat we should address?
Anything else, guys, on the equipment, on the something maybe that you have another take, another PPE, another piece of equipment, another level of respiratory protection. We become better together. Is there something, is there a rookie here I don't understand, or is there a veteran? I did it this way. Oh, by the way, I forgot to share this. I did speak to a handful of people that responded to Ricin in the last few days. And pretty much what I presented this to them is what they did. Pretty much. I wanted to make sure I was, you know, within the lanes of how it's been done before.
Cris, one of the questions in the chat that I'll begin to address, and then you can follow up, is Ernie's asking, what do you think about the RMX, FTX, and MX908? All great pieces of equipment if you know the limitations and capabilities and when to use it, right? Yeah. I've seen too many times that it's just coming out at the wrong time. It's not a magical silver bullet, any one of those pieces of equipment. It's only as good as the hands that it's in to use. Go ahead, Cris. What do you think about RMX, FTX, and 908?
No, I love it. I love it. It's a phenomenal instrument. But you know, if we were doing, we're going to, on this call, we will do 3 entries. The first one is let's clear the active shooter. Let's clear the LEL. Let's clear the radiation. Let's clear corrosivity. That's going to be simple. An LEL, pH paper, F paper, and listen, F paper. They use fluorine to make sarin, so you don't know if these guys were making organophosphates. So that's why we're going in with an all-hazard response, just not ricin and sodium cyanide. The second one would be we're going to bring the instruments to measure the things we can see: a beaker, a powder, a bag, you know, a liquid. And then the third one would be trace. So that would fall under trace. So, like, you know, we would bring the AP4C, we would bring the 908 in, maybe maybe we bring the multi-rate with a Tetler back so we can grab a sample of the air and send it to a lab so they can do mass spec on it. Yeah, so yes, but remember, it's almost like bringing a scuba tank to a snorkel, to skin diving. The equipment has to be used in the right priority. First, clear the active shooter. Second, let's measure and identify or qualify or categorize what we see. Third, we'll go into trace. It's almost like PSA. They look at your bag, what do we see? Then after what we see is, let me see what we don't see, what is trace instead of bulk, and they run it through a machine to see if you got nitros or ammonium nitrate on your skin. So yeah, I love it. I love it because you can't duplicate its ability to do trace. We would take trace across the room. We'd swipe high touch areas like the doorknob, the refrigerator, the handle in the toilet, and we'd run it through the 908.
Hey, I'll just hit on a couple more questions I see in the chat. Greg's asking how long the class is. Either biotech IQ, hazmat IQ above and below the line, or chem bio IQ are all single day classes that we'll deliver to you. And then again, discuss with you ahead of time if you want more. Do you want to follow that up with equipment hands-on training? We can customize. I'm proud to customize our training to whatever your needs are.
Yeah, Nick, just so the bio IQ is 8 hours of bio, 8 hours, a full 8 hours, a full day. The chem bio IQ is half a day, not as much. You do miss some things, but the morning is chemistry. So the morning is kind of the charts, the chemistry, the acetone, the cyanides, the unknown chemical, the vinyl chloride in Palestine, Ohio. They also had isobutylene and butyl acrylate, and I think something like monomethyl chloroether. So that's in the morning, and in the afternoon, the anthrax, the right. When I do bio IQ, I concentrate on the top three. Ricin, anthrax, and maybe botulinum, and an unknown bio, because there's more pathogens that are on the charts. I'll give you one: Legionnaire's disease. Something like Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So, and I'll give you an idea what we do in the full class that we don't do in the short class. Everyone that's still, get on your phone if you have your phone somewhere there, and put this in your browser. This is something we do in the afternoon. This is something no one probably knows it's around, or maybe Kara can do it. I don't know if you can do it, but anyway, go on globalincidentsmap.com. If you can do that, Kara, that'd be awesome. You can do that on the website, globalincidentsmap.com. Oh, there it is. Guys, that is a map managed by the Academy of Sciences that is updated every 300 seconds of all the crap going down on this planet. Biological disease outbreaks, hazmat incidents, drug interdictions, human trafficking. So you don't have to fake a drill. Go to this map, click on wherever, on whichever part you want, and it'll tell you, golly, there's a white powder right now happening in Nairobi at the American Embassy. A lot of crap going down that we don't hear. So we incorporate that map into the training on someone that you went on chest pains or fever calls or flu-like symptoms, and then you say, golly, this guy just came from the Republic of the Congo. He took off of Kenincha, and there's a Marburg outbreak in Kenincha. And you went to go see the guys with no respiratory protection. You touched the patient, you took his blood pressure, and you're saying, my God, am I exposed to Marburg, which is a cousin of Ebola? And I got to take my kids to school tomorrow morning? So that's part of the whole day class.
Okay, just going through some more of the questions. Yes, this session was recorded, and I'll count on Kara to share that with everyone once we're done. Hazmat IQ, when I was in New York City Fire Department, we made that our SOP for responding to hazardous materials and CBRN related incidents. right? It helped everyone get on the same page to understand what are the hazards, what PPE we should be in, what meters should we be using, what do we expect readings to be on those meters, and how should we properly decon. Chris, someone's asking about the protein pen versus a 2020 kit.
Yeah,
Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah,
go ahead.
how it works. So how does the protein pen work if they're using the 2020?
It's looking for ATP, and so when you put it in the buffer and it turns that purplish, bluish color, it's the same thing as the 2020. It's the same buffer as the vial of the 2020, not the pH vial, but the protein vial.
Many videos on YouTube, Hazmat IQ, chemicals of the month, that are still certainly valid from a younger Lieutenant Aguirre, but also still valid. So I would say take some time to search YouTube for some of our chemical of the months. They're very good I used to use them in FDNY as like refreshers for our guys, right? Because again, these are types of responses we don't go on every day, but they're critical responses to operate safely at. You need to be refreshed in that.
And Nick, let me share, and Kara, just following up, in the 8-hour class, we bring the ATP meter and we bring the protein swabs and we have consumables. So the class learns how to decon and how to use the instruments and interpret the reading to drive a behavior, an action. You know, it's no different, guys. Everyone did this in the radiation. As soon as you clean them and they go to the clean area, you do the pancake and you do the beta and the gamma, make sure that they're clean. If they're not, go back through decon. Same thing, but this is now based on a pathogen, a protein.
Okay, Chris, we've got 2 more questions I think I'm seeing on here. And guys, if you need to hop off, this is just, additional bonus information and content, so feel free to sign off. But I had a question here that says, in the foiled planned attack, how would the use of explosives had altered the detection and response?
Yeah, well, listen, so this is my opinion based on my experience. It's altered it because now you're having the bomb squad clear the room before we go in. So, for example, let's say I went on that call and the EOD or the bomb squad wasn't dispatched. It's like CBRN and EOD tend to not be the same unit in the military. They tend not to be the same unit in the fire department. They tend not to be the same unit in the police department. And so somebody forgot because they're focused on their specialty. But I would, bring the EOD to clean the room. Now, here's the thing, though. If they're making a homemade explosive, they might not know that. I've taught EODs and bomb squad. They're not into the chemistry. They've made it before, and they understand how it looks, but they might not bring a PID. And you can get a PID to go off on a white powder that's TATP. Then you got KI paper, potassium iodide paper. That's why they tell you when you go to FTIR in Ramon, don't shoot the pile. What I learned from the Marines is that roll a little bit of Scotch tape. Take a little bit of Scotch tape and tape just a couple of granules. If you can see it, the laser can see it. And then go somewhere farther from the hot zone and shoot through the Scotch tape. Close it back up, make it a little container like a sandwich. Inside is the powder, and shoot the powder. If you shoot the powder, if you can see it, the laser can identify it. If it's not, and then it'll tell you if it's a nitro, it'll tell you if it's a peroxide. Most HMEs, if not all, most all, have 3 or more capital letters. The FTIR Ramon will see it.
Somebody else asked, Chris will be presenting for us at the iChiefs Hazmat Conference in June. And if you plan on going to Chris's session, I would say get there early, or else you'll be one of the ones standing in the hallway trying to listen, because he always packs the house in on that.
Yeah, and then, what we'll do just as a little, promo, what I'm going to do is bring also the advanced Hazmat IQ charts. If you go to the 8-hour class, it won't be just the Hazmat IQ, it's acetone, and it's going to be the chemistry also of the chemical. So, for example, nitros tend to hit on the same wavelength in the spectra and all those derivative oxidizers. So if you went on something that was not in the library, but it spiked at the NO2, then you know it's a nitro. So we'll bring in a separate chart that you're going to take with you, plus the regular hazmat IQ charts, so that when you run on a call and you shoot something and you have a formula or a structure, but you don't have a name, you can put it in a name.
And Chris, we've got one more question I think that I'm seeing. It says, so once we use the protein, once you have a positive reading on the HHA, how do you dispose of it, in your opinion?
Yeah, it gets disposed of it in a red bag. So you don't just throw it, or you decontaminate it and you throw it as garbage. But it's so small that I would put it in a biohazard bag with all the PPE, even after decon. We're not putting that back on the rig. If it's a turnout gear, we're going to clean it. That's why we're not really going to get close and personal. But the HHA gets disposed of like a plastic PPE.
Thank you. And then last question I'm seeing on here was regarding, let's see here. It was, our list of our classes. Our website, we do now have a training landing page. If you go to noble.com, under what we do, you will see training. That takes you to the Noble training page. They're still working on a live feed of our updated courses, but coming, I would say within the next week, if you go to where we are, there'll be a live feed with the option to register for any of our upcoming courses. You'll just click on it. It'll say request a seat. You can enter your information. We'll double check with the POC to make sure there's seats available, and you will be able to attend a class in your area, or if you're willing to travel. So that's my best answer, or you can just reach out to training@noble.com. and we'll get you a list of the classes you're looking for that are being delivered throughout the country.
Yeah, and a couple of more things before I leave. One is on the website, in this meeting, I think is a PhD, Dr. Sean Feaster. He developed a new HHA. It's not in the fire service now. It is in the military. And I'm going to start bringing that instrument that does almost like a RAID 5, but in the form of a syringe. It's new. It's new to the market. Nobody has it. Because the first contract was the military that bought them out. I will be bringing that to all my classes, beginning immediately, because I'm getting a shipment from him soon. Also, on the meeting is Chief Tom O'Connell. Chief Tom O'Connell, it was the chief of he just retired from Broward County Fire Service, and he helped me, along with Captain Milton Painter, firefighter Brett Bigger, firefighter Rick Reddy. They helped me with the biological response guide. Just like Kara's husband, Joe Gorman, firefighter Joe Gorman from Fairfax, and many others.
Dad, not husband. A little different.
Oh yeah, did I say husband? Your dad, right? So just guys, nobody got here, including Chief Del Rey. Nobody got here alone. We need help. We help each other, and we become better together. And when we learn something, we give it away. So because what's the goal? That before we retire, we got to go home back to our family tomorrow. So after many thousands of tomorrows, we retire. That's what this training is all about when I teach. It's to keep my students safe, as if I'm going in there with my son and my daughter into harm's way. That way I bring a love into the class that I want you to see you succeed.
Thank you, Chris. And thanks everyone for sticking on and taking the time for these extra questions as well. We appreciate it. I'll make sure all of these are uploaded to our YouTube channel, and so you guys can review.
Yeah, every thread of the month, we host it the last Thursday of every month. So we'll continue to send out invites, but be ready for the next one. Thank you very much, brother. Outstanding job as always.
Namaste. Thank you. Peace.
Have a good day, guys. Be safe.
Stay safe.